All right, thank you. I have an invitation for each one of us today. Most of us are managers, but more than that, we're the high performers. Sometimes we're called superstars, we're the A players, and I know most of you, and I know that that is you. But I want you to think a little bit outside of that today. And the invitation that I have for you, when you come up against a hard question or a problem that you need to solve, is to ask Charlie. And so to introduce us to Charlie, we have Brian Regan today.
I lived in California for a while, and to get my California driver's license, this is true, I was reading in the California Driver's Handbook, it says, to receive your California driver's license, you will be required to give a thumbprint or another fingerprint if you have no thumbs. Is this a common enough occurrence? Everyone needs to know this contingency plan? Shouldn't that be just for one guy at the DMV to know about? I'm gonna need a thumbprint. I don't have any thumbs. Charlie! 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 Only Charlie needs to know what's gonna happen. Not every single person in the entire state of California. Why is that in that book?
All right, so Brian here is telling us about Charlie at the California DMV. And I'm going to make the bold claim today that there's a Charlie in every organization. And I'd like for you, as we talk for a few minutes, for you to think about the Charlie in the organization that you're currently in, the organization that you've been in before or are headed to. So how do we find Charlie? Charlie is the person who is a fixture in the organization. And you notice Brian Regan sort of seemed to think that we didn't need to have this knowledge codified in a book. It was sufficient to have it in Charlie's brain because he's always been here and he'll always be here. And it seems like most of us know this person in the organization, that they're a part of the organization just like the building and the office furniture. This person's always there. But because that person has always been there, they have an inordinate amount of knowledge about how things work around here. And that's the second sort of telltale sign that someone is a Charlie. And these people, because they know how things work around here, they're the person you can talk to when you need answers to all sorts of random questions. So everything from how do I get this blasted printer to print, to who do I need to talk to authorize blank, or where do I find whatever. These are questions that it always seems to be Charlie who can answer. But the interesting thing about Charlie is that Charlie is often not a superstar. Charlie may be just a solid performer that's there every day, day in and day out, and has been for 20 years. Sometimes Charlie isn't that solid a performer. In fact, I'll tell you some stories about the Charlie at the organization that I came from. So I mentioned that sometimes Charlie can be really frustrating. At the company that I worked for before the MBA, Charlie was really lazy. I mean, to be really frank, she was not very productive. She came in an hour late almost every day. It seemed like she took a sick day every week. I mean, it was really bad. I remember one Friday afternoon, we had started a new recycling program, and Charlie had thrown a bunch of confidential documents into this public recycling bin. And so I spent my Friday evening fishing out confidential documents that had, social security numbers on them, so that our firm wouldn't get sued. And she just hadn't thought through it, didn't really think about it, and tossed it. So you can imagine with an employee like this, sometimes it's tempting to fire them. And I have to admit that in this particular case, she was lucky that she had a job Monday morning. But we kept her, and I'm glad that we kept her. And I've come to realize why she was so valuable to our organization. We needed, and you as managers and superstars need, the knowledge that Charlie has. And if we had fired Charlie, we would have lost all of that knowledge. And the cost to our company would have been far higher than the pennies that we were paying her every month to keep her on payroll, because she was gone at the time. So I want to share two brief stories about the value that Charlie added in our organization. I had a sort of a number of responsibilities at the company that I was at. Mostly I was the problem solver, so I was the one that anytime something happened, I was the guy who could solve the problem. But I also had to kind of keep an eye on other things that were going on. And one afternoon, I was looking through the phone records at our company, and I noticed this weird pattern. There were a few clients that would call, and then they would get transferred to Charlie, and then no one would answer them. And the call would just ring and ring and ring, and finally, a couple minutes later, they would hang up. And it seemed to be the same clients, and so I got really worried about this. And with the history that I had with Charlie, I went up and I was upset, and I walked into her office and I told her I needed to talk to her. I explained what was going on, and I wanted to understand what was happening. And what Charlie told me was that we had a few former clients that liked to call us and just chat with our staff for up to 90 minutes. They would just call and talk. They were, in some cases, homebound, or they just were friends with our staff. And so it was literally like they were just calling and wasting time, sometimes for up to literally an hour and a half at a time. And so what Charlie had done, she knew each of these clients. She had worked with them. She'd memorized their phone numbers. And so anytime a call came up, she would see the number, recognize that it was that client, transfer the call to her office, and then let it ring so that none of our staff would have to waste their time talking to these former clients. And it was a fascinating moment for me, because I thought, here we have this employee that's only here half the time. She's not really productive, and yet in the limited time that she has, she's using the knowledge that she has. She actually has memorized our clients' phone numbers, and is able to increase the productivity of the rest of our employees. And so this was sort of a realization for me, that even though her knowledge, though it didn't seem like a lot, it actually made a big difference in the overall productivity of our office. I'll tell you one other story. We got a frantic phone call one morning. It was a Friday morning again. I don't know why these things happen on Fridays. It was a Friday morning, and we had a former client who was to appear before a judge and needed some paperwork that we had. And that's fine, except that the client's information and data was stored in a legacy CRM that we didn't use anymore, and we sort of had stored somewhere on some backup server. And of course, I'm the problem-solving guy, so it gets put on my desk to somehow extract this information and get it to the client. So I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out where to even find the information. I need to somehow log into the system. I'm going to have to learn how to use the old CRM because we stopped using it because it was so poorly designed. And the task in front of me was going to take who knows how long, maybe into the weekend. But we had to have the info for Monday. So I spent the morning fighting with this server, and I finally found it, and then I'm searching for the password and credentials to be able to get in. And I'm looking all throughout. We had all this documentation because our company was really good at that. But even sifting through pages and pages of documentation, I couldn't find the login credentials. So I had no way of accessing this information. So finally, in frustration, I say, okay, I've got to go take a lunch break. So I've spent half the day, I've wasted half the day on this project. I go to take a lunch break. I'm sitting there, and it so happens that Charlie was eating lunch at the same time. And we're chatting, and she was telling me something. She loved cats, so she was telling me about cats. And then she asked me some question, and I told her, I mentioned this problem I was working on. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, my credentials still work. Let me go get that for you." 7 minutes later, she came back with the documents that I needed and finished her lunch. She knew where to look. She knew what she was looking for. She knew how to use the system. And because she'd been there, that was the system she used for years before we switched over. Again, a project, and my time cost the company a lot more than hers. A project that I wasted half a day on, Charlie solved in 7 minutes. So we come back to the end, and in conclusion, to all of you who are managers, are the superstars, you are the A players, and I have the utmost confidence in your ability to solve problems, just like I have confidence in my own ability. But I invite you, as you go out into your organizations, when you have a question or you have a tough problem to solve, to ask Charlie.